I'll start with Paris, North. We have been out of lockdown for a month now, and things are getting slowly back to normal, including for city logistics. And sometimes they got back to normal too much, as you will see from my last, in my conclusion. So what we did at the chair logistics city that I had is that we implemented a barometer of urban logistics in lockdown. It was actually a daily survey. Every day we asked them the same questions, and we did that for 6 weeks. We did that to a panel of companies representing urban freight in Paris. So we had small companies, large companies, we had gig delivery workers, we had delivery platforms. So they were responding to that survey every day, and every week we would do a summary of results. Everything is online on our website. So we asked about volume of activity, operating difficulties, recruitment problems, sanitary equipment, and everything related to the city, regulations, access to delivery areas, congestion, and of course there was no congestion at all, but we asked about all these things related to the public space, and an open question. And then after the beginning of the end lockdown, which we asked an additional question on how they were preparing for the end of the lockdown and and what's happening today in a way. So I'm not going to show you all the results, but that's what you get if you look at the weekly synthesis that we did. For example, this one is about the volume of delivery activity. So I put week 1 and week 6, right? And in green, it's about getting more deliveries since the lockdown compared with a normal situation. And in red, it's getting less deliveries compared with a normal situation. So as you can see, there was still a lot of red at the end of the lockdown. So basically, in terms of volume of activity, overall, it's between 30 and 50% less delivery activities that the operators got during the lockdown. So really a decreasing demand for deliveries. So that's the overall situation of activity. Another example of what we could see from our barometer was the question about, can you get masks for your delivery workers? As you can see, you have a lot of red, including at the last week. It means that the delivery operators couldn't get the sanitary equipment they were looking for their delivery drivers. So masks in particular have been a continuous problem for the delivery sector in Paris. So that was quite an important issue. So now I want to be, just to give you a few more ideas of what happened during the lockdown for the last mile sector. It's a delivery system that had to adapt constantly. They really were very flexible and adapted to the new situation. They had to adapt to a significant variability in orders, in demand. From one day to another, they didn't know how much orders they would get and how many delivery staff they needed to put on the road. High variability, very different from a normal situation. The closing of all the pickup points in shops, and French use pickup points in shops very much for their B2C orders. So the closing of all these shops meant that delivery operators had to deliver at home again. And they didn't like it actually, because it was a huge decrease in productivity, because they had to deliver more delivery points, and they needed different staff and more staff in some cases. Empty return problems, many vehicles had to go back out of Paris empty, contrary to the normal situation where you find some return freight. Half of the panel had recruitment problems, especially for temp workers and for their employees. We were busy doing, taking care of the kids or doing something else. So recruitment problems for half of the panel. Many interesting initiatives. Of course, many new markets. Many operators switched from one market that was closed down to another market that was a new market. For example, home deliveries of pharmacy increased a lot, obviously, and home delivery of food. Many operators were not used to working on that sector, and they just switched to new sectors. It was not easy, but many of them did that. Interesting initiatives such as the main wholesale market in Paris finally started a very efficient home delivery service. They wanted to do that for a long time, but they never really tried it. So because of the lockdown, they actually put in place a good service for home delivery directly from the wholesale market. So that was a very interesting new service. A big retail group, Casino Monoprix, converted 5 of their stores that were located in office districts, so they were not very used, into urban warehouses. So huge flexibility in changing their stores into urban warehouses to be more efficient in doing more home deliveries around these areas. Solidarity operations, deliveries of chef meals to Paris public hospitals, many other things like that. And what was interesting too was that many cities, city of Paris and also other cities around, played an interesting role as interfaces. So they put up municipal platforms to inform on local retailers that wanted to deliver at home. The restaurants were closed or the shops were closed, but they could still be open for deliveries, right? They didn't know how to deliver before. Many of them turned to delivery operators and they had to find them. So the local authorities played a sort of interface role in doing that. So that was quite an interesting new role for local authorities. Something new also, collaborative home delivery was a very small niche. It is still a very, very small niche, but some apps were created where neighbors were delivering neighbors between individuals, right? So not professional delivery platforms, but collaborative delivery platforms between individuals, private individuals. So it remained a niche, but many local initiatives did appear on that issue. Overall, B2C trends were very high, like everywhere else, but it seems that French cities were not as strong as many other cities in the world, but this remains to be validated. So we will need data from all our colleagues, right? So the increase in home deliveries due to lockdown was very strong in Asia, as you know, but also it seems was stronger in the UK, London, in Germany, but Aaron will tell us if it's true, or in the US too, than in France. So food e-commerce during lockdown increased 30%, more or less, compared with the previous, before the lockdown. So it's plus 30%. So it's a lot, but it's not as much as happened in other places. Amazon Prime now made a breakthrough, and there was a strong increase in click and collect. So you order online your food, but you don't expect a home delivery. You go and get your order in specific places. So click and collect, 30% more. Non-food e-commerce overall increased by 10–20% in French cities. So not as much, it seems, as in other countries. Again, it needs to be validated. There was a strong rise for do-it-yourself, for gardening, for fashion and accessories at the end of the period. France had 2 court decisions concerning Amazon. Amazon had to close down all their distribution centers in France because of sanitary issues and with the unions. But what was interesting is that even though they had to close their French distribution centers, they did not stop delivering people in France. They just used European distribution centers. So of course, Amazon is extremely well connected in their supply chain to the European region, right? So it didn't really change much their supply chains and their deliveries. Interesting. So of course, this is not Paris, as you can see, but I wanted to show you that what happened in China, because I want to go on with instant deliveries in Paris. But what was really impressive for Asia and for China in particular, and for that's the example of Beijing, is that the services of the operators that deliver very quickly, instant delivery operators, delivering after 1 or 2 hours when you order, exploded. So there's a huge increase of operators such as Meituan or Eli.me, which are really, really big operators that deliver you immediately after you order. And I took that number from The Economist, but I thought it was fascinating. Meituan now employs 1 million self-delivery contractors every day in all the cities in China. So what happened in the rest of the world and in Paris, in this new market of instant deliveries, as you know, all these companies, Uber Eats, Deliveroo for France, really increased their activity. And I have the number for the world sales of Uber Eats here in April, plus 89%. So that's really, really a huge increase. In Paris, these people were delivering, and we would see them in the street, and we would call them everyday heroes. These delivery guys in bicycles or in mopeds. The problem is that the discussion about their working conditions just increased. They were very visible in the street, being the only one actually delivering us for some of the goods, but their working conditions actually was quite bad, including because they couldn't get any sort of mask or sanitary protection. And at the same time, there was an important court decision of the Supreme Court of France, called Court of Cassation, and it stated that these delivery workers that are gig workers, they are freelancers, actually were employees. So a very big decision on the legal status of these people. So now the debate in France is complicated because these guys want to be gig workers, they want to get better pay, they want to get better working conditions, but the judge has said that they were employees. And as you know, some of these decisions also happened in other countries. Delivery platforms prospected new markets. And in France, Uber Eats, for example, signed an agreement with Carrefour to make food home deliveries because of the lockdown. And overall competition accelerated in this area. You know, Just Eat just bought Grubhub, the really big operator in the US. And in the UK, Deliveroo and Amazon are getting closer. So acceleration of things in this new market of instant deliveries and big increases in traffic. Overall, in terms of consumption, I think the lockdown accelerated changes that were already ongoing. So B2C has moved into new ages and new socioeconomic groups. Older people and poorer people are getting more online than before because of the lockdown. So we have to take that into account for the situation after COVID, right? Food B2C really took off. So another interesting trend. And I think this is going to stay. So food online is something new and it's going to stay. Traditional retailers have to be more and more multi-channel if they want to survive the new economy. And there are fast-growing niche, short circuits, and people asking their goods directly from farmers. So new niche of consumption, but they are going to stay probably in France, and especially in cities. So in my conclusion, I want to give you a little feeling of the city logistics that we can expect for tomorrow after COVID. And I want to quote two interesting things, one from the Secretary of Transport that said that the crisis will be a catalyst for decarbonizing the transport sector. And also the Environment Deputy Mayor in the city of Paris said, the crisis makes us realize that we need to relocate part of the food production. So they see the crisis, the COVID situation, as a way to change things in terms of getting cleaner last mile operations and getting closer, relocated farming or production, so people don't need to order things from very far away. I just want to remind us, as my final conclusion, that these hopes, very interesting, but we do have a lot of unsolved issues in the last mile sector. First, more B2C means that we will get, if things remain equal, more motorized vehicle miles in cities. So my first warning is that consumption patterns from the lockdown have accelerated operations that may mean more motorized vehicle miles. So that's not very good. The implementation of low emission zones in French cities has been rather slowed down because of the lockdown. So we have to be very careful that cities don't forget to do what's good for a sustainable last mile operations, including low emission zones. But for the moment, some cities are forgetting about the low emission zones because of the necessity for economic development, because of the recession, because of the COVID, etc. So my second warning is about don't forget what was really going on in terms of low emission zones and other regulations in cities. Really think about getting cleaner delivery vehicles. And I'm giving the example of London that has postponed their introduction of the Euro 6 standard for trucks and vans because of the COVID. So, but let's be very careful not postponing too many things about clean deliveries. Another thing that struck me, and it's another warning, is that tactical urban planning, new cycling facilities that we have seen implemented in cities because of the COVID and the post-COVID, very interesting. But there were very few announcements to promote clean deliveries in these new ways of organizing streets. So again, let's be very careful, and we should accelerate clean delivery vehicles, and including into the use of these new cycling facilities, for example. We have leverage and we have to use it, but cities, in my understanding in France, are not using it enough. And for example, the national subsidy for purchasing an electric vehicle for delivery companies remains very low in France. There was some announcements recently, but really we should help them achieve acquiring clean delivery vehicles much more easily. And a last thing is that training for delivery drivers needs to be much more in the public debate. I told you about these delivery heroes in the street. We shouldn't forget them once the crisis is over. We need to train and we need to accelerate better conditions and attractiveness of delivery jobs in general. Thank you very much.